This question asks you to graph the inverse of the given equation and also to write the equation of the inverse. A lot of students make a mistake by graphing the actual function that's given, which is a parabola, but in this case it just wants the graph of the inverse. And as you noticed at the bottom, none of these three different options that we have to choose from are the equation of a parabola, which you should know that is the equation of parabola. So that's kind of why that is set up this way. So, there are two methods to approach this problem. The first method would be an algebraic method, and then the second method is graphical. So like the algebraic method is where you would find the inverse and then go ahead and sketch it. So you kind of find the equation at the bottom first. Whereas the graphical method is you would take into account what the original equation is and then sketch and then write the equation. So I'll kind of show you both ways here. If I start with the original and say, okay, well, let's find the inverse of it. If you write out your three steps, you're subtracting 4 first, you're squaring second, and then you're adding 2. That's your order of operations of the original function. Now we're going to undo that in the opposite order. So in order to find the inverse of f of x, then we will do those in the opposite order. So that means that I will start with x and I will subtract 2. And then from that, I will do the square root of it, which means you need to have the plus or minus, another very common mistake. And then I will finish by adding 4 on the outside. So right there, that is going to be your solution down here at the bottom. That inverse function plus or minus the square root of x minus 2 and then plus 4 on the outside. And as it states here, don't forget to start your equation with the inverse. Even though mine's a little sloppy there, make sure you get that notation in there because we are writing the inverse function. And once you look at that, then you say, all right, well, let's try to sketch the inverse now. Let's sketch that graph because that's what we're asked for. You notice that this is a sleeping parabola, right? Which it is important that it's a sleeping parabola. That's where you have the plus and the minus in there, and that means that the vertex of that sleeping parabola is going to be the opposite of what's inside, so that's a positive 2 and then a positive 4. Oops, I don't need that positive in there, but you understand what I'm talking about. And so you have 2, 4 would be your vertex, and then your stretch factor is a 1, so over 1, up 1, and then that could be what your sketch looks like to go through those points. The other method would be the graphical method, where instead of starting with algebraically, you look at the graph of the original. The original has a vertex at, based upon looking at the equation, at positive 4, positive 2. So you can go ahead and plot that point. It also has a stretch factor of 1, so you could then sketch your parabola through those points. So what approaching it this way allows you to do is just think about it graphically. It's like you have a parabola now through the vertex 4, 2. You know that an x and y flips, so that means your vertex is going to be at 2, 4. And since your original is a parabola, this sleeping parabola has to be your inverse. And so, you don't have to do the algebra as such, but you could plot this point as your inverse vertex and then sketch the sleeping parabola. And since you already know how to write the equation of a sleeping parabola through a vertex, you could then turn that into this inverse. It's a little bit kind of a backwards way of approaching it, but it still works. And since you know that a parabola and a sleeping parabola are inverses of each other, that's how you can guarantee that you get that plus minus there, and you can have the correct top half of the graph and the bottom half of the graph for that inverse.